welcome. It's Thursday, first Thursday in May, and the Navi team is back with additional webinar on the latest release we had just before Easter. A big migration between our technologies coming from our new colleagues in US, MarketDesk, and the Naviate product, Naviate Accelerate. So I have my colleague and the product owner, Shir, with me today. She's the product owner, and of course, coming from MarketDesk in the US, that's going to walk us through today's presentation. Myself is the global product manager, both for the Revit environment and the cloud, that will try to monitor everything when we're doing this presentation today. So the theme for today is that it was a major release on the Naviate Accelerate product, our day-to-day features in Naviate for Revit. And we added more like around 14, 15 new features and improved even additional 14, 15 features. And we will try to share that together with you today and try to connect the different features with some use cases going forward and see if it makes sense for you in your daily work in Revit. Just so you're aware of it, we will record this webinar and it will be available both on the Naviate.com page next week and also YouTube. For newcomers on the GoToWebinar environment, you have a possibility to ask questions during the presentations in the Q&A field or question pane, it's called. And I will try to answer them while Shir is presenting. And if not able to answer those, I will put them into the QA afterwards. High level, Naviate is made by AC professionals for the AC professionals in the industry, focusing on project setup, model management, and documentation. And of course, aiming to save time, increase the control over your data, and optimize different workflows. It will be held in the Revit 2023 environment. So that make me handing over this presentation to Shir. Welcome, Shir. Thank you for joining and helping me out with this presentation today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to show everybody all of the new features and improvements in Naviate.
It's a lot. So.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. I'll take it away. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So like Jan Tore said, this release has been in the workings for a little while now, since you know, the merger of the MicroDesk product core with the Naviate Accelerate product. We were able to bring in a lot of the unique functionalities across the core product into Naviate Accelerate. So a lot of new features for the Accelerate users to use, and that's what I'm going to go over today, as well as improvements to our existing features based off of, you know, merging similar features from core into Accelerate. I'll cover that as well towards the end of the presentation. And this is an ongoing collaboration, and we will continue making these improvements, merging these features, and you'll see that even in the next release. So some really exciting things to come in this release and the next one. First, I will kind of group them under the toolbar groupings, the categories that you see within the toolbars going across the Accelerate toolbar. And the first one is the new features that is going to help us manage our families. We have two new features, Move to Nearest and Parameter Transfer. The Move to Nearest feature, it works to help with modeling different elements within your Revit model and moving them to align with other surfaces. When I say surfaces, think walls, ceilings, floors. And what's really great is you can set different settings for this. Do you want to align the entire grouping of features? Do you want to align each individual feature? Do you want to align it based off of the entire bounding box, the center point. And then you can also, which is my favorite part, specify an offset. This is really great if you need your elements to be a specific distance from another element. The example I will show is having all of my doors a certain distance away from the wall, right? Because when we tend to place our doors or move and design our spaces, we always need the door a certain distance from the wall, and we want that to be consistent across our whole project. Next, we're going to look at the parameter transfer feature. This allows us to transfer shared parameters between our families utilizing a Revit schedule. So we can create a schedule that shows all of the parameters in that family with all of the families we want to copy parameters to, and then making sure that we're using a shared parameter file that already has those shared parameters created. We can transfer shared parameters between families. So that's really exciting, really great if you're, downloading a bunch of families on the internet or from a manufacturing page that doesn't have your shared parameters in them. We can easily transfer our shared parameters to those newly downloaded families. So let's go ahead and see how this works. Like I said, first we're going to start with that move to nearest feature. And we see here that I've maybe redesigned my walls, and now my doors are, kind of different distances away from my walls. So I want to use my move to nearest to align them. The move to nearest feature does work only in a 3D view. So I'm going to select the doors, create a 3D view that showcases them so that I can then use the command and align them. In order to align them, I need to select them because it is selection based, and I'm going to use my Naviate live selection feature for this to easily select the doors in the view, and then use the move to nearest command. When I pull this up, you'll be able to see some of those settings that I talked about, where I can select to move it to the nearest or the bounding box of the element and of each individual element. And then we have certain categories to choose from. I want walls, and I can also select walls from a linked model if needed. Then I can specify an offset and use the X, Y, and Z buttons to move it in those directions. Simply click it one time and it's going to align all of my walls to be that offset from my specified category. And it's really that easy. Now that we have our modeling portion done with these families, let's look at transferring those parameters. We're going to use doors again as an example, and I have a schedule that I've created that shows all my door types and the two parameters that I want to transfer. And we can see that in one family I have them, but in all the other families I can't modify that field because that family doesn't have that parameter in it. So I'm going to use Naviate Accelerate's new parameter transfer feature that's going to show me the parameters I have in the schedule. I can specify if I want to add them, and then I can uncheck if I want it to be an instance. In this case, I want them to be type parameters, so I just uncheck that field. And then I can easily select which families I want to transfer these parameters to. I could do all of them. I could do some of them. And in this example, I just want to do a few just for time's sake. And then we can also say if we want to save these families onto our desktop or override the original version. Again, for time's sake, I won't do it. But once we hit that go button, it'll ask us to override those families because it is opening the family, running or adding the parameters and loading it back in. But once we've done that, we can see that that field is now editable in the schedule because those parameters now exist in the family. So two features to help with managing, well, first for modeling families and then managing the parameters in families that have been added to the families group in the Accelerate tab. Now let's look at data management. Data management is a big struggle in Revit, having to manage so much data within our BIM models, and we've added 3 features to help with that. One is the find and replace command, then some parameters, and last, which is probably my favorite one, the advanced parameter manager. Find and replace is doing exactly what it says. It's doing a find and replace. And if you've used other Naviate data grid features like the edit parameter values or edit sheet parameters, you know that you can run a find and replace within that data grid, right? If you select the cells and do a right click, well, now you can do find and replace on a selection of elements in your views or in your model. So I can run a find and replace or select all the elements I want to run the find and replace on. And then, for example, I'll show you 2 examples where I'm changing all of the names of rooms and then even making model changes by changing the offsets of ceilings. So if I want to do batch changes to a specific parameter value, I can now do that based off of a selection. Next, we're going to look at sum parameters. This is a simpler command where it's just calculating the sum of all the things I'm selecting. So it's another selection-based command where I can select a bunch of elements, just click the button, and it will sum all of the parameters that it can sum, like length, area, things like that, and just output the result. And last is the advanced parameter manager. This is a huge improvement to managing shared parameters in Revit. It allows me to batch create shared parameters in a variety of different ways. One, by batch creating it from a shared parameter file. Another, batch creating it from a linked Revit model. So if a consultant gave me their linked model, did not give me a shared parameter file, I can now just search all of the parameters in the link and push them into my own model. And then also, just if the shared parameter doesn't exist anywhere, we can use the UI to create it in itself. And we can create those shared parameters in the project or push them directly into families. So another way to get parameters into families. So let's take a look at them. First, we're going to look at find and replace. So like I said, I'm going to show the example of finding and replacing the name of some room, something really simply that just has to do with data. So I have a bunch of rooms called conference, and this is selection based like the move to near. So I'm going to use my favorite live selection feature in Naviate to select all the rooms, and then use the find and replace to select a parameter. So it's going to list out all the instance parameters and select the value I want to find. It'll list out the options that already exist in my model, and then I can type to search it, and then I can type in the new value that I'm replacing with it. So in this case, maybe my PM wants to change all the conference rooms to meeting rooms, and I can really easily do that in a matter of seconds. The next example is more of a model change. So it's data, but it's also modeling, where we're going to change the ceiling heights on a bunch of our ceilings. So again, we're going to use the live selection to select all of the ceilings. I do love stringing, multiple Naviate commands together to create easy workflows. So in this case, we're gonna change this ceiling height offset from 8 feet to 8'6". I do apologize that this model is in metric. Is not in metric and is in imperial. So, but this works in both cases. So we're going to easily select that height offset from level, find the 8 feet, change it to 8'6" in a matter of seconds on all of the elements I've selected. So 2 examples, changing data and also changing model location or element location. Next, we'll look at sum parameters. Like I said, super easy feature where we're able to select a bunch of elements in the model. Think maybe I want to get the length of all of the facade walls. Simply select them, and like I see, I can get the total length of all of the elements I selected. Another example is maybe using it to get the length of all the lines. Same thing, select all the things I want, and just pull up the command and it'll just list all the values out. Last, we're going to look at the advanced parameter manager. This is the one I'm most excited to show you guys, which is the ability to batch create and manage your shared parameters. Here you can see I can select which shared parameter file to load, and then at the top I have a lot of filters. Once I start checking those filters on, I'll be able to see the parameters based off of those filters, and even do a search filter to narrow down my search to the parameters I want to create. Then I can batch make modifications to the categories, the type, the discipline, and other things like that, and choose to create them in my project. We can see that based off of the status, it is now instantly created in my project. We're going to show another example where we're going to be creating them in a family, but it's the same exact process. Search to find those parameters, select the properties of it, and then instead of clicking to create it in the current project, we're going to click to create it in a family, and then we'll get a list of all of the families we have in our project. being able to specify which family or multiple families we want to push this shared parameter to. Note that for families, it must be created in the shared parameter file first. And then you'll be able to transfer them or create them in that family. And we can see that the status updates once we're done to let us know that it was created. Now that we were able to batch create shared parameters from a shared parameter file, I also want to show you how we batch create shared parameters from a linked Revit model. Once we're able to check that on, we can see all the parameters in the link. What's really nice about this is that it's automatically specifying the properties of that parameter from the linked Revit model, like the categories that it's applied to in the link, the type or instance, whether it's an instance or type parameter, and everything else. So I don't have to do anything here. If I want it to match the link exactly, I can just click which parameters I want and then create it in my current project. And there we have it. Those parameters are now added to my current project with the same categories that it is in the linked Revit model. The last one I want to show you is how to create parameters that don't exist anywhere, that are brand new. They're not from a link. They're not in my shared parameter file. So I'm going to use Naviate Advanced Parameter Manager to create a brand new shared parameter. Simply select the plus button to create it and name it however you would like to name it. And then we can do the same thing. We can do multiple ones of these, but I'll just do one since I think I've already proved that we can batch create shared parameters. We'll just do one for that category. And in this case, I want to create it in the shared parameter file and in my current project, and we can do that. Once, the other thing we can do is a duplicate diagnosis. So it's not just about creating them, but a little bit of management as well. We can see if there's parameters with the same name in our project, or, well, it's across our project, our shared parameter file, and our linked Revit model. And then we can search for those parameters, see that there are parameters that are the same with the same name, and then I can go ahead and delete it. Of course, we do get a warning to make sure that all data will be deleted. And then I can choose where I want to delete it from, whether that be the project, the loaded families, the shared parameter file. I'm just going to do all of them. And then that parameter is deleted. So that's the Advanced Parameter Manager. Really great for batch creating and managing shared parameters. Next, we'll look at the features added for sheets and views. We have a lot of new features for documentation. We have a new category in that Sheets and View toolbar for documentation. The first one I'm going to show you is the section from element. This allows you to create a section parallel to an element. It will create it exactly parallel to the element you're selecting, and with a limited view depth. We know the biggest frustration in Revit is when you create a section, it creates this view depth across the entire model, across the entire project, and can be really annoying. You have to zoom out to, find the end of it and then bring it back in. This will limit that view depth, so it makes it really easy to create those sections. And because it's creating it perfectly parallel to the element, you don't have to worry about things that are at angles. If it is perfect, then it makes it hard to dimension it. This way, it's always parallel. Next, we'll look at our new tagging features. We have 4 actual tagging features that are part of our new tagging workflow. We have the tag settings. This is where you can set up all of your tag configurations, or what we call tag configurations, where you can create different configurations per category, specifying multiple symbols to use. We can designate a location to place the tag relative to the element, as well as specifying offsets relative to that location, so that you can get your tags in the exact location you want on your views based off of your elements. Then we can use tag select to do a selection of elements to tag based off of those settings, and the most amazing feature, which is tag all, where you can tag multiple views at one time using those settings without having to open a single view. Think about how much time that'll save you. Lastly, we'll look at the dimension grids feature, which will allow you to dimension all the grids in the view at the top and left side of the view with one click of a button. So in all of this, we're able to really optimize how we're documenting our views and streamlining that to make it a lot faster and easier. So let's jump into Revit and check it out. So the first thing is the section from element. Here we're able to actually specify some settings for these sections we're creating. We can specify the view type, which will list out all of the view types in your project, and you can choose which one you want to use. And then we also have an option to prompt for side to place section on. If you uncheck this, it will just automatically pick a side. Then I can run the command and select an element. It will automatically generate the section with that limited view depth parallel to my element. So that makes it really easy, like I said, to dimension these elements because the view is parallel to it. I like to set a keyboard shortcut specifically to this command. It makes it so much faster and easier to create my sections, and it is a two-click process. First, by clicking a reference line within the element and then clicking on the side which you want to create the section on. Makes it really easy to create sections across walls, and then even while I'm working on different designs to create a section. It does encompass the entire element, so even if that element is crossing multiple levels, it will create it. And like I said, the greatest part is that view depth. So now that we created some views, let's look at documenting those views with our tagging features. So here we can see I have multiple views, multiple sheets with multiple views, and we're going to tag all of them in a few minutes. When I go to my Manage Sheets and Views, I can see I have a new category, Documentation, where I have my tagging features. The tag settings allow you to create configurations, and I already have a configuration file loaded where you can see an example of all the different types of configurations I have. You can see that you can set up multiple tag symbols, specify locations and offsets per category. If I wanted to create a new configuration, simply click the plus sign. This is how you would start to create it from scratch. Specify a name that you want this configuration to be named. I don't have one to tag my ceiling, so maybe I want to create one for my ceilings. You'll see that I can specify if I want it to be used for links, and then if I want this to be the default for that category, as well as if I want the orientation to be by view or by element. Then I can select the category, specify the symbol, the location from the 9 different location options, as well as the value for the X and Y offsets, and if I want to use a leader or not. So all of those options are there per configuration, and you can create multiple ones per category. And as long as you have a default for that category for one of them, then it'll use that default for that category. And it is all saved externally to an XML file so that you can share that on other projects, other team members, things like that. While I have my settings open, I could begin tagging elements. This is really used to test it out, making sure the tags are being placed, that the offsets you specified are correct, that the location you have specified is the way you want it, that the tag you've chosen is the right tag, and it is selecting or placing the tags based off of the configuration I have selected in the UI. We can also create groups of individual configurations and filter by them. So I have a bunch of groups. I can create a filter so I can maybe organize them a little bit better. And you can click the groups button to create those groups. And I like to create them based off of my drawing type, but you can create them any way you want. And that's how you can group your tags together. This is going to come in handy with the tag all feature I'll show you in a little bit. Now that we have our settings created, we're going to want to use the tag select feature to select the elements. If you wanted to tag elements in the linked model, you would just use the tag select linked. I do want to specify this is doing it based off of the default and linked options checked. So I have one for room, windows, and doors, a default for those categories, and it's only going to allow me to select those categories. Once I select them, I click finish, and they're all tagged based off of my configurations that I've created. But of course, that's not good enough for me. I want to tag every single view in my model without having to open a single view. And that's where we're going to use the tag all feature. You can see I have a ton of views here, none of which are tagged, a bunch of which are placed on sheets. And I want to be able to tag all of them at one time. And that's where the tag all feature comes in. It's going to allow me to use those configurations that I've set up, either the individual or the groups. This is what I said, the groups are going to come in handy. If I'm tagging a linked model, I can select from any linked model I have, and then use my filters to easily find the views that I want tagged. So I want to be able to, in this case, tag all of these part plans that I've created. It is case sensitive, so just be aware of that. But once I search, I can even use those headers to organize them so that I can get all of the views that are on a sheet specifically tagged. And once I have my selection done, all I have to do is click the add button, and it's going to tag all my views for me. We'll be able to see at the bottom of the UI the load or the processing of it. So we can see it going through and tagging all of those views. It really doesn't take that long. It just takes a few seconds here. We're almost done, and we'll get notified of all the tags that are placed. And there we go. We're able to tag all the views without even having to open a single one, because Naviate did it for me. So there's those views tagged, and we can even open up a different sheet, and you can see that all the views are tagged there as well. The last command I want to show you is the dimension grid command. This will automatically, with literally one click of a button, just one click of the command, place a dimension string at all the grids in the view. So I'm able to add my dimension string. It is going to place it at the top and the left, so I just have to move it to where I want it to be after the fact, but it still is a lot easier than having to go and click every single dimension to tag it, to dimension it, sorry. And there we have it. Our views are documented, our tags are placed, our dimensions are added, and we're basically ready to get these drawings sent out. Speaking of getting things exported, the next grouping is our printing, export, import group. We have 3 new features added to that: the print set manager, the imprint feature, and the create table feature. The print set manager, if you're familiar with the Naviate publish feature that already existed, you know that you're able to go into that feature and modify your Revit view sheet sets. Well, we've just created a standalone feature for that you can directly access in the toolbar, and you can create, modify, or delete your Revit view sheet sets. Then we have 2 new features to work with documents that live outside of the Revit model. Imprint allows us to link in Microsoft Word, Excel, or PDF and converts it to an image on our active viewer sheet. This is a link, so you can maintain your Word or Excel or PDF files, modifying them in that file type, and then know that you'll be able to update it into Revit so that you can place it on a sheet or a view and have it part of your documentation set. Create table, that only works with Excel and will convert your Excel table into either a dummy schedule or a drafting view as lines, text, and filled regions. This is also a link, so you can make changes in Excel and update it back into Revit. So let's take a look at those. The first one is the print set manager. Like I said, this works very similarly to the one in the publish feature, but now is just a standalone command that you can access from the toolbar. We can see all of our view and sheet sets in Revit. And what's the nice part is we're maintaining the project browser organization to make it easy to find your sheets and views based off of the organization you have in your project browser. We can do a save as, a rename, a delete of those view sheet sets. And we can even have filters to help find them. So this makes it really easy to modify your view and sheet sets, create new ones, maintain them. You're able to see how many views or sheets are in not just the entire set, but also each tree of the browser, project browser. Now let's look at the two features that allow us to link documents into our Revit model, and that's Imprint and Create Table. So with Imprint, like I said, we can do Word, Excel, or PDF. So the first example I'm going to show you is bringing in a Word document. Here I've created a Word document. That's my LOD matrix, and I want to place that on my sheet. Once I bring it in, it will ask me if I want to bring in all pages, a range of page, or a single page. I only have one page in this document, so that makes it easy. But like I said, it does convert it to an image and places it on my sheet. And it is a link, so I can update it, and I'll show you that after I bring in my Excel file. So I'm also going to use this to link in an Excel file. I have a material schedule that I'm going to use to link the Excel file in. There we go. There's my schedule. And again, it's going to ask me which sheets or print areas that I have in my Excel file that I want to bring in. I can select multiple ones or just an individual one. And again, it will convert it to an image and place it onto my sheet. So let's take a look at how the updating works for this. We're going to open this Excel file and make some changes to it. And we can make multiple changes. We can change data, we can add, we can modify, we can change coloring. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to do a simple change that modifies the color of these cells, just so we can see that, kind of obvious that this is a change. Once we're able to save the file, then we can go back to our Create Table, our Imprint feature, and update it. I'm going to select the file and select to update this schedule. Once we do that, we can see that it was updated. So we looked at Imprint. Let's look at Create Table. Note that the difference with Imprint and Create Table, Imprint works again with Word, Excel, and PDF. Imprint only works with Excel and converts your Excel table into either a Revit schedule or a Revit drafting view as lines, text, and filled regions. So we're going to select our schedule and convert it into first a drafting view. And this is also able to be updated same way. If I wanted to, I could select to update it. So here it is, lines and text in a drafting view. And we're also going to do the same exact schedule, same exact Excel file, but convert it to a schedule. And just like that, it is converted. The difference here is with Imprint, it places it directly on the active sheet or view, but with Create Table, it's creating a view or a schedule. So if we want to place it on the sheet, we have to do it after the fact, finding in our project browser and then placing it on a sheet. Like I said, this also updates. So if we make modifications in Excel, we can update it. One thing to note is you do have to set a print area in the Excel file for the Create Table feature to know what to bring in. So you can simply open the Excel file, select the area that you want to bring in, go to the page layout in Excel and specify to set the print area. It's really that easy. That's the only step you need to do and to make sure that it brings it in correctly. So those are our features to do with printing, exporting, and importing. Lastly, we'll look at the improvements. So that was all of the new features up until now that came from Core that were brought into Naviate Accelerate. And now we'll look at some of the improvements to our existing features Some of these have to do with merging core features that had similar functionality into our existing Naviate features, and then some are just making general improvements to our products. We'll look at the quick filter elements. This was merged with one of the core features to add the functionality of being able to select Revit rule-based filters, plus some other improvements like being able to select and hide, or select and isolate. So previously we could only select Naviate filters, but now we can also select Revit rule-based filters. So you don't have to create them in Naviate. You could have just had them in your project for the visibility and graphic settings, and now use them for selecting things as well. Next, we'll look at combined parameter values, where we've added the option to also select Revit database parameters. These are data that we can get access through the Revit API, but normally can't in normal Revit world. So now we can, using the combined parameter values. We've added to the align tags feature the ability to also align text and dimensions. The align to path actually works the exact same way, except we've moved the options for it to a modeless dialog to free up space in the toolbar. So it's no longer in the toolbar, it's in a modeless dialog. And lastly, in project cleanup, we added the purge unused function in project cleanup. So let's look at all of these improvements. First, we'll look at the quick filter elements. So like I said before, you could only use Naviate filters for it, but now we've added a lot of new functionality to the quick filter elements feature to allow us to more easily select elements in our project. We can now select between our Naviate filters, our Revit rule-based filters, and our Revit saved selection filters. We're going to focus this demo on the rule-based filters. Here now I can see all of the rule-based filters I have in my project. I can choose to select and hide, or select and isolate these elements. To make it easier to select them, we can also see that we can have those three options directly in the rows to make it even easier to select individual filters. If I want to select multiple filters, I can check them on and then use the buttons in the bottom right to run those selection options. We can even access the Revit out-of-the-box filters dialog by selecting to add a filter or modify existing filters, so we can see those rule-based filters there. And then we have some other options like toggling to add to selection, and also being able to select in the current view only. So I'm going to show you those options as well. I'm going to select a few elements in my view before running the command. And that's when I want to toggle on the add to selection. If I don't have this toggled on, it will deselect what I have selected and then select based off of the filter. If I have it toggled on, then it will maintain my previous selection and add the selection from the rule-based filter to it. So we can see that here in the properties, and then also if I were to isolate these elements, you'll be able to see that those walls maintained from the previous selection. In only the rule-based filters option, we also have the toggle to show in current view only. This is used, for example, when I have a filter like all rooms, which works for all rooms in the entire model. By default, if I don't have that checked on, it'll select it in the whole model. If I have that checked on, you can see it only selected 32 rooms because I only have 32 rooms in this particular view. We can also see that the option to add to selection and all the other, selection options are applied to both Naviate filters and Revit saved selection filters. So that's the improvements to the quick filter elements command. Next, we'll look at combining our parameter values. With the combine parameter values feature, if you've used it before, you know that you can select a variety of instance or type parameters and combine them to a new destination parameter. Well, now we have the option to toggle to database, which will show our database properties. So if I select a category, I can now choose database properties, which are showing me all the different properties from the Revit API database, and I can select to combine one or multiple parameters to a new destination parameter. So we can see a few of them here. I'll select host, I'll select ID, and we can also combine these with any other instance or type parameters. So let's just pick one instance parameter here. I'll add a prefix. This is same process as before. We can add a prefix or a suffix. I'll add a few prefixes just so when we actually generate it, we can identify the different values pretty easily. And then I can choose a destination parameter. Same workflow as before. We haven't changed anything here. And we can save them to use at a later time. Once I have all that done, I can hit combine values. It'll combine it to that new destination parameter. I can select my element and see it there. So that's pretty neat that we can get access to even more data than we did before. This also still works with our managed update project or batch combine parameters with our project update. That hasn't changed. We can select that setting, even if it has database parameters, to be used to automate. So we looked at some parameters. Let's look at aligning our documentation, like our tags. This already existed before, as you know. If I select a bunch of tags in my modify ribbon, I can use Naviate to align them with a variety of align options. But now we've added the ability to also align text and dimensions. So if I go to a detail view that has some text and dimension, it's kind of a hot mess. So I'm going to use my align features to align them to the left and even spread them out vertically to get them all so that I can read them easily. And we can do the same thing with our dimension. So I can select a series of dimensions and choose to align them as well to clean up this detail and get everything aligned. Now that we've aligned some annotations, let's look at aligning model elements with our aligned path feature. You may have noticed that the toolbar has changed and those settings are no longer in the toolbar. It is now a modeless dialog. I can select a command and get a dialog with the same exact settings, where I can assign the distance between symbols or number of symbols. I can specify to keep the rotation or align to a linked elements to a link. And then once I have my settings specified, I can select the elements. You'll see at the bottom left, it gives you instructions. Select the element, select the path, and click finish. Then it will align it. Functionality hasn't changed. Because it is a modeless dialog, I could still, use the undo button, make any changes I want, and then run the commands again to get the exact placement I want. Lastly, we'll look at the new project cleanup functionality. Of course, we have to save our project first, but then we'll look at the new option for purge. Prior to this addition, we would have to do the project cleanup and then purge afterwards with the Revit out of the box method with the manage purge. And we can see we have a lot of things that need to be purged out of this model, for example. But now I can just do it all at once, clean up my whole project, including purging it. I'm just going to purge it because you already know all of those existing features, all those existing options to clean up the model. But now we can also include purging unused elements as well. So we'll give it a few seconds. It'll clean up and purge the model. We can either run this on our current model or create a new detached copy. And just like that, the model is cleaned up and my elements are purged out. And we can see that now it's a lot cleaner, a lot less elements, and we can reduce that file size that way. right? So that concludes the demo or the presentation of all the new features and improvements in Naviate Accelerate 2023.1.4 release. Do we have any questions on any of the new features, any of the improvements?
No, nothing. I think the audience is a little bit shy today, or impressed or amazed what is shown today, Shir.
All right, awesome. So yeah, but you can always reach out with questions anytime to your Naviate team.
So give it a couple of minutes for you if you have some late questions you would like to get an answer on, or we have some questions maybe. Does the Create Table feature create new parameters in Revit when creating the schedule?
No, so it doesn't actually create any parameters. It's a dummy schedule, so it's just generating it in the header of the schedule with the table with just lines and text, so it's not actually generating any parameters. I would recommend using, if you want to round trip data between Revit and Excel, there is the Naviate Export Import, where you can export Revit schedules, modify data in Excel, and import that back in.
That's how it is. So I'll grab the screen and do the closing. Let me see. What you saw today, and if you have some suggestions on improvements or a totally new idea, we have an open ideation portal that you as a user or even a new customer could add a new idea within the different products. Today we talked about the Accelerate part, but you can choose any of our products and add some new ideas and thoughts around improvements. So this is the link, and please add it. And the beauty about doing this is that you will follow the process from being an idea, and we will see when we're moving things for review, development, and even when you ship your idea as a new feature in Naviate. So we will constantly communicate around your idea by using this ideation portal. So Naviate is not only a product portfolio. Being a part of the Naviate community, we have the web page where you can access all the different products, release notes, information. You can even chat with us. We have weekly or bi-weekly blog posts diving into some features or workflows or even tips and tricks. The help desk is also a page on naviate.com talking about all the different installation guides, known frequent answer questions, potential errors as well that we are aware of, so you can search for them on the help desk page. I mentioned the ideation portal. We have a community page as well where you can start connect with other peers using Naviate and even raise questions and discuss on different topics. As a Naviate subscriber, you have the access to an extensive e-learning platform with a lot of workflows and videos and white papers on Naviate, in addition to the whole Autodesk portfolio as well. We have the store, and we also have the possibility for you to sign up for the newsletter, so you can stay informed on what's happening on the Naviate portfolio and the different products as well. So I guess, Shir, thank you for joining me today and walk us through all the new features. It's a lot, I know, and it's more to come as well, I know, later in June. So yes, it's up for the audience. Just stay tuned and look forward to the next release as well. Okay, did I lose you, Shir?
Yep, I'm still here.
No, you still good. So let's say thank you for attending today. Thank you, Shir, for helping me out.
Yeah.
And next Thursday in June, we will have a new webinar theme is not decided yet, but we will get back to you and make sure to inform you when that's available. So thank you for today, and see you next time.